The schoolhouse smelled like death. Not the clean, quick kind, the slow rot of fever, the sour tang of sweat-soaked bedding that hadn't been changed in days because there was no one left to change it. Eliza Hartwell pressed her handkerchief against her nose, but it didn't help. Nothing helped. She'd been breathing this air for 6 days straight, watching parents die while their children screamed in the next room. Now the parents were gone. The children remained. She stood in the doorway, staring at 6 small faces huddled on the floor. They'd pulled every blanket in the building into one corner, creating a nest that smelled like smoke and unwashed hair. The oldest, a girl named Sarah, maybe 12, had her arms wrapped around the 2 youngest, twins who couldn't have been more than 4. 3 boys sat in a row against the wall, their eyes tracking Eliza's every movement like they expected her to disappear too. "Miss Hartwell?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Are they coming back?" Eliza had been asked that question 47 times in the last 3 days. She'd stopped counting after that. "No, sweetheart, they're not." The girl's face crumpled, but she didn't cry. She'd run out of tears on day 2 right after her mother stopped breathing. Now she just sat there, holding those babies, her jaw set in a way that made Eliza's chest hurt. The door banged open behind her. "Miss Hartwell?" Thomas Brennan, head of the town council, stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. He was a compact man with a voice that always sounded like he was addressing a courtroom. "We need to talk." "Not now." "Yes, now." He glanced at the children, his expression flickering between discomfort and impatience. "Outside." Eliza didn't move. She'd learned something in the last week. When men like Brennan wanted to talk outside, it meant they were about to say something they didn't want witnesses to hear. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it here." His jaw tightened. "Fine. The council met this morning. We've made arrangements for the children." "What kind of arrangements?" "There's an orphan train leaving from Cheyenne on Monday. We've secured spots for all 6. The words hit her like a fist to the stomach. "You can't be serious." "The town can't support 6 orphans, Miss Hartwell. We barely survived the fever as it is. Half the mines are shut down. People are leaving. We don't have the resources." "They're not resources. They're children." "To feed and house them indefinitely," Brennan continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "The orphan train system finds good homes for children like these. Families back east who can provide—" "Families?" Eliza's voice rose, sharp enough that the smallest children flinched. She forced herself to lower it. "You mean farmers who need free labor, factory owners looking for small hands. You're shipping them off like cattle. That's not fair." "Neither is this." Brennan pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket and held it out. "The wagon leaves at sundown. I'll need you to have them ready." Eliza stared at the paper. It was an official notice, signed by all 5 council members. Legal, binding, final. "And if I refuse?" "Then the sheriff will remove them by force." Brennan's expression softened slightly, which somehow made it worse. "Miss Hartwell, I understand you've grown attached to these children. What you've done this week, staying with them, caring for them, it's admirable, truly. But you're a school teacher. You make $30 a month. You can barely support yourself. You can't possibly—" "Get out! Eliza! Get out!" He left the paper on the desk near the door and walked out, his footsteps echoing on the wooden porch. Eliza stood perfectly still, her hands clenched so tight her nails cut into her palms. Behind her, she heard Sarah whisper something to the twins. One of them started to cry, a thin, exhausted sound that barely counted as crying anymore. She turned around. 6 pairs of eyes, 6 children who'd already lost everything, about to lose what little they had left. "Miss Hartwell?" This time it was one of the boys, the middle one with the gap in his front teeth. "Are they going to take us away?" The truth lodged in her throat like a stone. She should tell them, prepare them, help them understand that this wasn't her choice, that she'd fought, but it wasn't enough, that sometimes the world just— "No," she heard herself say. Sarah's head snapped up. "What?" "They're not taking you anywhere." "But Mr. Brennan said—" "I don't care what Mr. Brennan said." Eliza crossed the room and knelt in front of them, bringing herself down to their eye level. "Listen to me, all of you. I'm not letting them put you on that train. Do you understand?" The gap-toothed boy frowned. "How are you going to stop them?" Good question. Eliza had no idea. She had 6 hours until sundown. No plan, no money, and no authority to contradict a town council decision. What she had was a stubborn streak her father had always called unladylike, and a growing fury that felt like it might burn straight through her chest. "I'll figure it out," she said, "but I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" They stared at her. These children had just watched their parents die. Trust was probably the hardest thing she could ask for. Finally, Sarah nodded. Okay. Eliza stood up, her mind already racing. "First thing, we need to get you out of this schoolhouse. The smell alone is making you sick. Sarah, can you help the little ones? We're going to my boarding house." "Mrs. Fletcher won't like that," one of the older boys said. His name was James, she remembered. 11 years old, lost his father in the mines before the fever even hit. "Mrs. Fletcher will have to deal with it." She gathered them up, 6 children, 4 blankets, a basket of food someone had left on the porch 3 days ago. They walked through town in a ragged line, drawing stares from every porch and window. Eliza kept her head up, her hand tight on the smallest twin's shoulder. Let them stare. Let them see what their council had decided to throw away. Mrs. Fletcher met them at the boarding house door, her face already set in refusal. "Absolutely not. They'll only be here a few hours," Eliza said, pushing past her with the twins in tow. "They need food and a bath. I'll pay extra." "Miss Hartwell, I run a respectable establishment. I can't have—" "They're children, not criminals. They're orphans." Mrs. Fletcher lowered her voice, as if the word itself was shameful. "The fever took their families. For all we know, they're still carrying—" "The fever burned out 4 days ago. The doctor cleared them yesterday." Eliza herded the children up the stairs. "If you have a problem with this, you can take it up with the council. I'm sure they'd love to explain their orphan train solution to the church ladies." That shut her up. Mrs. Fletcher might have been heartless, but she wasn't stupid. The church ladies had already been making noise about the council's handling of the fever response. This would give them ammunition. Eliza got the children into her room, barely big enough for her own bed, let alone 6 extra bodies, and set about making them as comfortable as possible. The twins got the bed. Sarah and the other girl, Emma, 9 years old, hadn't spoken since her mother died, curled up on a pile of blankets by the window. The 3 boys claimed the floor near the door. "Stay here," Eliza told them. "Don't open the door for anyone except me. Understand?" Sarah nodded. She'd become the unofficial leader, Eliza realized, the one the others looked to when they were scared. "Where are you going?" Sarah asked. "To find help." She left before any of them could ask the question she couldn't answer. Help from who? The town of Ridgefield, Wyoming Territory, consisted of 1 main street, 3 side streets, 2 churches, 1 general store, 1 saloon, 1 bank, 1 doctor's office, and maybe 200 souls depending on the season. The mining operation had brought most of them, but the fever had sent a good chunk running for safer ground. Those who remained were the ones with nowhere else to go. Eliza started with the doctor. "I can't help you," Dr. Morrison said before she'd even finished explaining. He was washing his hands in a basin, scrubbing them raw like he was trying to erase the last week. The council made their decision. The council isn't thinking clearly. They're panicked. They're practical. He dried his hands on a towel that had seen better days. "Miss Hartwell, I watched 17 people die this week. 17, including 4 children. This town is traumatized, scared. Nobody wants to take on 6 orphans when they're barely holding on themselves. Someone must. Nobody will." He met her eyes, and she saw the exhaustion there, the defeat. And even if they wanted to, the council has legal authority. The children are wards of the territory now. The decision is out of everyone's hands. Including mine? Especially yours. She left without saying goodbye. The general store was next. The owner, a woman named Mrs. Patterson, who'd always been kind to Eliza, looked stricken when she explained the situation. "Oh, honey, that's terrible. Those poor babies. Will you help?" Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted. Not cruel exactly, just closed. "Help how?" "Talk to the council. Convince them to reconsider. You have influence. I have a store that's barely breaking even and a husband who's talking about moving back to Ohio. She reached across the counter and squeezed Eliza's hand. I'm sorry. I truly am. But we can't take this on. 3 more stops. 3 more versions of the same conversation. By the time the sun hit its apex, Eliza's fury had crystallized into something cold and sharp. These people weren't evil. They were just scared, broken, and willing to sacrifice 6 children to make their own survival easier. She walked back toward the boarding house, her mind spinning through increasingly desperate plans. She could hide the children, take them into the mountains. But where? For how long? She had no supplies, no shelter, no idea how to survive outside of town. She could try to run, catch a stage to Cheyenne, buy train tickets going west instead of east. But that took money she didn't have, and the sheriff would catch them before they made it 5 miles. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the man until she nearly collided with him. Careful. Eliza stumbled back, an apology already forming, and looked up. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of build that came from actual labor, not the soft prosperity of town life. His coat was worn but well made, his hat pulled low enough to shadow most of his face. What she could see was weathered, hard-lined, somewhere in his mid-30s. He had the look of someone who'd spent years in the sun and hadn't enjoyed any of them. Sorry, she said. You're the school teacher. It wasn't a question. How did you? Small town, word travels. He stepped aside, giving her space to pass. Heard about the orphan train. Eliza's chest tightened. Everyone's heard, apparently. No one's doing anything about it. That include you? The question caught her off guard. I'm trying. Nobody will help. So try harder. Anger flared hot and immediate. Excuse me? You heard me. He pushed his hat back slightly, revealing eyes that were either dark blue or gray, hard to tell in the afternoon light. You're walking around asking permission, begging people to care. That's not how you win. Oh, really? She crossed her arms. And what would you suggest, Mr. Mercer? Cole Mercer. Mr. Mercer. What's your brilliant strategy? Stop asking. Start taking. He shifted his weight, and she noticed the way he moved. Careful, deliberate, like a man who'd been hurt enough times to be cautious about it. The council made their decision based on fear and money. Give them a better option. I don't have a better option. I don't have anything. Then find someone who does. And who would that be? You? The words came out sharp, mocking. She was too tired and too angry to care about manners. Cole Mercer looked at her for a long moment. His expression didn't change, still neutral, still unreadable, but something in his eyes shifted. Maybe, he said. Eliza blinked. What? I've got a ranch about 8 miles north. 500 acres, decent water, house that needs work, but it's standing. I run cattle, mostly. Some horses. He said it like he was listing facts, not making an offer. Could use the help, actually. Kids are good workers if you train them right. Her heart started beating faster. Are you saying I'm saying if you need someone with resources to stand up to that council, I'll do it. But you need to be sure. Once we start this, there's no backing out. I don't even know you. No, you don't. He tipped his hat slightly, like they were concluding some business transaction. Think about it. You've got until sundown. He walked away before she could respond, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust. Eliza stood frozen in the middle of the street, her mind reeling. A stranger. She'd been talking to a complete stranger who'd just offered to, what? Take in 6 orphans? Fight the town council? The whole thing was absurd. Dangerous. Possibly insane. Also, it was the only real option she had. She ran back to the boarding house, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The children looked up when she burst through the door, their faces anxious. Did you find help? Sarah asked. Maybe. Eliza pressed her hands against her temples, trying to think. There's a man, a rancher. He says he can help, but what? But I don't know him. I don't know if we can trust him. She looked at Sarah, then at each of the other children in turn. This isn't just my decision. It affects all of you. If we do this, if we accept his help, it means leaving town, going to his ranch, living there. Is he nice? One of the twins asked. Her name was Lucy, Eliza remembered. Or maybe that was her sister. She still couldn't tell them apart. I don't know if he's nice, Eliza admitted, but he's willing to help when no one else is. James, the 11-year-old, frowned. What if he's mean? What if he works us too hard? Then we leave. I promise you, all of you, if this doesn't work out, if he turns out to be cruel or dangerous, we'll find another way. She knelt down, meeting their eyes. But right now, this is the only chance we have. The wagon comes at sundown. If we're still here, the sheriff will take you to Cheyenne and put you on that train. This way, we stay together. Together, Sarah repeated quietly. She looked at the other children, some silent conversation passing between them. Finally, she turned back to Eliza. Okay, we'll go. You're sure? We're sure. Eliza wanted to feel relieved. Instead, she felt terrified. She had just agreed to uproot 6 traumatized children and take them to live with a man she'd spoken to for all of 5 minutes. A man who might be kind, or might be dangerous, or might be something in between. She had no idea what she was doing, no idea if this would work, but she knew what would happen if she did nothing. Pack everything, she told them. We leave in an hour. The next hour moved too fast and too slow at the same time. Eliza paid Mrs. Fletcher for the room and ignored her pointed comments about rash decisions and impropriety. She withdrew the last of her savings from the bank, $43, accumulated over 2 years of teaching. She bought supplies at the general store, necessities only, flour, beans, salt, coffee. Mrs. Patterson didn't ask questions, just packed everything in 2 crates and accepted Eliza's money with sad eyes. By the time she got back to the boarding house, the children were ready. They didn't have much. A few changes of clothes, some books from the schoolhouse, one raggedy stuffed bear that the twins refused to leave behind. They stood in a quiet cluster, holding hands, looking like exactly what they were. Kids who'd been through hell and didn't trust the world to stop hurting them. We need to go, Eliza said, before anyone realizes what we're doing. They slipped out the back door and made their way to the edge of town, keeping to the alleys and side streets. Eliza kept expecting someone to stop them, the sheriff, a council member, some well-meaning citizen with an opinion about propriety. But the streets stayed empty. People were good at minding their own business when it was convenient. Cole Mercer was waiting at the North Road, sitting on a wagon that had seen better years but looked sturdy enough. 2 horses stood in the traces, patient and calm. He saw them coming and climbed down, his expression unreadable. "Wasn't sure you'd show," he said. "Neither was I." Eliza helped the twins into the back of the wagon. "This is Sarah, Emma, James, Thomas, Lucy, and—" She paused, looking at the other twin. "Grace," the girl whispered. "Grace," Eliza repeated. "Children, this is Mr. Mercer." Cole nodded at them, not smiling but not cold either. Just neutral. "Call me Cole. We're going to be seeing a lot of each other." He helped load the supplies, then climbed back onto the wagon seat. Eliza hesitated, suddenly aware of how final this was. Once they left town, there was no going back. The council would see this as defiance, maybe even kidnapping. She could lose her teaching position, her reputation, everything. "You coming?" Cole asked. She climbed up beside him. The wagon lurched forward, wheels creaking. Behind them, Ridgefield grew smaller, the building shrinking into the dust and distance. None of the children looked back. They sat in the wagon bed, pressed close together, their faces turned toward the horizon. "Thank you," Eliza said quietly, "for doing this." Cole didn't answer right away. He just kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the reins. Finally, he said, "Don't thank me yet. We've got a long way to go before this is over. The council will come after us. Tomorrow, probably. Maybe tonight if they're smart." He glanced at her sideways. "You ready for that?" "No." "Good. People who think they're ready usually aren't." He clicked his tongue at the horses, urging them faster. "The ranch is defensible. Got good sight lines. If they come, we'll see them long before they see us. And then what? Then we have a conversation about legal authority versus moral responsibility. Should be fun." His tone was dry, almost sarcastic. Eliza couldn't tell if he was making a joke or stating a fact. She studied his profile. The hard line of his jaw, the scar that ran from his temple to his cheekbone, the way his eyes never stopped scanning the landscape. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Really? Why are you?" "They're children. They deserve better than being shipped off like cargo." "There's your answer." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "Sometimes the right thing to do is the stupidly dangerous thing. Figure we might as well be stupid together." Eliza laughed, a short, startled sound that surprised her. Behind them, one of the children laughed too, soft and uncertain. It was the first time she'd heard any of them laugh in a week. The sun was getting lower now, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. The landscape spread out around them, endless grassland, distant mountains, a sky so big it made her feel small and insignificant, also strangely free. Like maybe, out here, the rules that govern town life didn't apply. "Tell me about your ranch," she said. "Not much to tell. Bought it 5 years ago, built most of the house myself, got about 30 head of cattle, dozen horses. Creek runs through the property, garden needs work." "Do you live alone?" "Yeah." "No family?" "Not anymore." The way he said it, flat, final, made it clear the subject was closed. Eliza didn't push. She had her own topics she didn't want to discuss. They rode in silence for a while, the wagon wheels crunching over the dirt road. The children had gotten quieter too, worn out from emotion and exhaustion. Lucy and Grace were curled up together, already half asleep. Sarah sat with Emma's head in her lap, stroking her hair absently. The boys sat in a row, watching the landscape pass. "Miss Hartwell?" Thomas called from the back. He was the youngest of the boys, maybe 6 years old, with a serious face that made him look older. "Yes." "Are we going to be cowboys?" Cole snorted, a sound that might have been amusement. "Maybe. You any good with horses?" "Never been on one." "Then you'll learn. Can't be a cowboy if you're scared of horses." "I'm not scared of anything," Thomas said, in the way that only 6-year-olds can, absolute conviction despite all evidence to the contrary. "Good. We'll test that tomorrow." The sun was nearly gone by the time the ranch came into view. It wasn't much, a single-story house that looked like it had been built in sections, added onto over time. A barn that leaned slightly to the left, a few outbuildings, fences that needed mending. But there was water. Eliza could see the creek, and there was space. Lots of space. Cole pulled the wagon up to the house and climbed down. "Welcome home," he said, and for the first time there was something almost soft in his voice. The children tumbled out, tired and stiff from the ride. Eliza helped them down one by one, her own legs shaky after hours on the wagon seat. The house looked bigger up close, or maybe just more overwhelming. She had no idea how to run a ranch. She barely knew how to run her own life. "I'll get the horses settled," Cole said. "You get the kids inside. There's a pump in the kitchen, food in the pantry, not much, but enough for tonight." He walked away before she could respond, leading the horses toward the barn. Eliza watched him go, then turned to face the house. "All right," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Let's see what we're working with." The inside was rustic. That was the kindest word for it. One main room that served as kitchen and living area, with a fireplace that dominated one wall, a table with mismatched chairs, a few shelves with books and supplies, 2 doors leading to what she assumed were bedrooms. "It's dirty," Emma said. She'd been silent for so long that hearing her voice was startling. "Then we'll clean it," Eliza said. "Sarah, can you help me figure out sleeping arrangements? James, Thomas, see if you can get a fire going in that fireplace. Emma and the twins—" She stopped. The twins had already claimed a corner, dragging blankets into a nest. Emma stood in the middle of the room, looking lost. "Emma?" Eliza said gently. "Can you help me check the pantry? See what kind of food we have?" The girl nodded and followed her to the kitchen area. There wasn't much: flour, beans, some dried meat, a few cans of vegetables. Enough to keep them from starving, but just barely. They'd need to buy more supplies, which meant going back to town, which meant facing the council. One problem at a time. By the time Cole came back from the barn, Eliza had the children organized. The boys had managed to get a fire going, filling the room with warmth and light. Sarah was making sandwiches from the bread and meat, her movements careful and deliberate. The twins were still in their corner, but at least they were awake, watching everything with wide eyes. "Not bad," Cole said, surveying the scene. "You work fast." "Teacher skills, organization is half the job." Eliza handed him a sandwich. "We need to talk about sleeping arrangements." "Right." He took a bite, chewing thoughtfully. "The bedroom on the left is mine. The one on the right is yours. Kids can sleep in the main room for now. I'll build more space later." "You don't have to, Yes, I do. 6 kids in one room is fine for a week. After that, they'll need privacy, space to grow." He finished the sandwich in 3 bites. "We'll figure it out." "We." Eliza tested the word. "You keep saying we." "That's the deal, isn't it? You and me raising these kids together." He met her eyes, and for the first time, she saw something other than neutrality there. Determination, maybe. Or stubbornness. "Unless you've got another plan." "No, no other plan." She looked at the children, scattered around the room in various states of exhaustion. I don't know how this is supposed to work." "Neither do I. But we'll figure it out." Cole set his empty plate on the table. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be rough." "The council." "Yeah, they'll come. Probably bring the sheriff." He didn't sound worried exactly, just resigned. "When they do, we'll be ready." Eliza wanted to ask what ready meant, but she was too tired, and the children were starting to drift off, their eyes closing despite their best efforts to stay awake. She helped them settle in for the night, blankets spread across the floor, bodies curled together for warmth and comfort. Sarah lay with the twins, her arms around them protectively. James and Thomas claimed spots near the fireplace. Emma ended up near the door, like she was guarding the exit. "Good night," Eliza whispered. "You're safe here. I promise." She wasn't sure if she was lying or not. Her bedroom was small but clean, a narrow bed, a dresser, a window that looked out toward the mountains. She sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself feel the weight of what she'd done. She'd stolen 6 children from the town council, violated a legal order, thrown her lot in with a stranger who might be noble or might be crazy. The smart thing would be to go back. Apologize. Explain that she'd panicked, made a mistake, let emotion override judgment. The council would be angry, but they'd probably forgive her. She'd keep her teaching job, her reputation, her safe, predictable life. She thought about those 6 faces, the way they'd looked at her when Brennan delivered his verdict, the trust in Sarah's voice when she'd said, "Okay." Eliza lay down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow the world would come knocking. But tonight, for the first time in a week, those children would sleep without wondering if they'd wake up somewhere worse. That had to count for something. Outside, she heard the sound of Cole's footsteps crossing the main room, then silence, the crackle of the fire, the soft breathing of sleeping children. She fell asleep thinking about orphan trains and town councils, and a stranger with gray-blue eyes who'd offered help when no one else would. Somewhere in her dreams, she heard hoofbeats. Getting closer, coming fast. But morning was still hours away, and for now, they were safe. For now. The sound of horses woke her before dawn. Eliza sat up fast, her heart already hammering. For a confused second, she didn't know where she was. The room was wrong. The bed was wrong. Everything smelled like wood smoke and dust. Then it came back. The ranch. The children. Cole Mercer. The hoofbeats were getting closer. She scrambled out of bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, and rushed to the window. The sky was just starting to lighten, that gray-blue color that comes right before sunrise. She could make out shapes moving in the distance. 3 riders, maybe 4, coming from the direction of town. The bedroom door opened without a knock. Cole stood there, already dressed, a rifle in one hand. "Stay inside," he said. "Keep the kids quiet." "Is it them?" "Who else would it be?" He moved past her to look out the window, his jaw tight. "Sheriff's leading. Looks like Brennan's with him. Can't tell who the others are." Eliza's stomach dropped. "What are we going to do?" "We are going to stay calm. I'm going to have a conversation." He checked the rifle, then seemed to think better of it and leaned it against the wall. "No point making this uglier than it needs to be." "Cole, Just keep the kids inside, no matter what you hear." He looked at her, and for just a second, something like concern crossed his face. "Can you do that?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. He left, his boots loud on the wooden floor. Eliza heard him cross the main room, heard the front door open and close. She pressed against the window, watching as he walked out to meet the riders. He moved like someone who'd done this before, shoulders back, hands visible, nothing threatening in his posture, but nothing submissive either. Behind her, she heard Sarah's voice, thin and scared. "Miss Hartwell." Eliza turned. All 6 children were awake, huddled together near the fireplace. They must have heard the horses too. Sarah had both twins pressed against her sides. The boys stood in a tight group, their faces pale. "It's all right," Eliza said, going to them. The lie tasted bitter. "Mr. Mercer is handling it." "Are they here for us?" James asked. "I don't know. Probably." She knelt down, meeting their eyes. "But you're not going anywhere. I promised you that. Remember?" "Promises don't always count," Thomas said quietly. He was staring at the door like he expected it to burst open any second. "This one does." Outside, voices rose. Eliza moved back to the window, the children trailing after her despite her earlier instruction to stay put. They all crowded around, trying to see. Cole stood about 20 feet from the house. The riders had stopped a respectful distance away, which was smart of them, Eliza thought. Cole might not be holding the rifle, but his stance made it clear he could reach it fast if he needed to. Sheriff Hayes dismounted first. He was a broad man with a thick mustache that had gone mostly gray. Eliza had always thought he looked kind, but right now his expression was hard and official. "Mercer," he said. "Sheriff, you know why we're here." "Got a pretty good idea, yeah." Cole's voice carried clearly in the morning air. "Though I'm curious how you figure this is your business." "The children are wards of the territory. Council placed them in the orphan train program. Miss Hartwell removed them without authorization." Hayes shifted his weight, his hand resting near his gun belt. Not threatening exactly, just present. "That makes it my business." "She didn't remove them. I invited them to stay on my property." "Semantics." "Law," Cole corrected. "Last I checked, a man can invite whoever he wants to his own land. No crime in that." Thomas Brennan dismounted next, his face flushed with anger or exertion or both. "This isn't about property rights, Mercer. This is about the welfare of 6 orphan children. Miss Hartwell acted rashly, emotionally. She's not equipped to care for them. Neither are you." "That's so." Cole's tone stayed level, almost bored. "What makes you think that?" "You live alone on a cattle ranch. You have no experience with children, no wife, no family structure. And you were planning to put them on a train to strangers. That your idea of a family structure? Those trains place children with vetted families, people who can provide stability, education, proper moral guidance. Yeah, I've heard about those placements." Cole took a step forward. Brennan took a step back. "Saw a whole town full of them once, down in Kansas. Kids working 16-hour days in factories. Girls getting sold off to men 3 times their age. Real stable." Hayes held up a hand. "That's not what happens to most of them, and you know it. Most isn't all. And I'm not real interested in gambling with kids' lives." Cole glanced back at the house. Eliza knew he couldn't see her through the window, too dark inside still. But she felt the weight of his look anyway. "Way I see it, you've got 2 choices. You can try to take these kids by force, which means you'll have to go through me first, or you can accept that they're staying here and find a legal way to make that work." "There is no legal way," Brennan snapped. The council has authority over town matters. This ranch isn't in town limits." Cole crossed his arms. "Unless Wyoming law changed overnight, I've got the right to house whoever I want on my property, including 1 school teacher and 6 kids." The 3rd rider finally spoke up. Eliza recognized him. Marcus Webb, the council's lawyer. He was younger than the others, nervous-looking, clutching a leather folder like it might protect him. "Mr. Mercer, the law regarding orphaned minors is quite clear. They require legal guardianship. Neither you nor Miss Hartwell have been appointed as guardians. Without that appointment, you're essentially holding them without authority. So appoint us." Webb blinked. I'm sorry? You heard me. Appoint us as guardians. Problem solved. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You're a lawyer. Draw up whatever papers need drawing. We'll sign them. Make it legal and proper and all that. Cole's voice took on an edge. Or are you telling me the council would rather send 6 kids to uncertain futures than let them stay somewhere safe? Brennan's face had gone from flushed to nearly purple. This is absurd. You can't just decide to take on 6 children like they're stray cattle. There are procedures, protocols. Screw your protocols. The words hung in the air. Hayes's hand moved closer to his gun. Eliza felt Sarah grab her arm, her fingers digging in tight. Cole, the sheriff said, his voice dropping into warning territory. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm making it exactly as hard as it needs to be. Cole didn't raise his voice, but something in it changed. Got colder. These kids just watched their parents die. Spent a week sleeping in a schoolhouse that smelled like death. And your solution is to stick them on a train and ship them off to people who see them as free labor. You want me to make that easy for you? We're trying to do what's best. No, you're trying to do what's cheapest. Big difference. Webb cleared his throat. Mr. Mercer, even if we were to consider guardianship, there are significant concerns. You're an unmarried man. Miss Hartwell is an unmarried woman. The two of you living together, raising children together, without the sanctity of, then we'll get married. Eliza's breath stopped. Inside the house, she heard Sarah make a small sound. One of the twins whispered something. Emma's hand found hers and squeezed. Outside, the men had gone silent. Hayes and Brennan both stared at Cole like he'd just announced he was growing wings and flying to Denver. You'll what? Brennan said finally. Get married. Today if you want. Cole said it like he was discussing the weather. Casual, factual, completely insane. That solve your respectability problem? You can't be serious, Webb said. Why not? You said the issue was 2 unmarried people raising kids. Marriage fixes that. Cole looked at Hayes. Sheriff, you're authorized to perform marriages, right? Well, yes, but no buts. You want legal? I'm offering legal. Miss Hartwell and I get married, adopt the kids as our legal wards, raise them on this ranch. Clean, simple, respectable. He paused. Unless you've got some other objection you want to pull out. Brennan sputtered, actually sputtered. You can't possibly. Miss Hartwell would never agree to such a, Why don't we ask her? Cole turned toward the house, raised his voice. Miss Hartwell, you in there? Eliza's throat had closed up. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what was happening. Marriage. He'd just proposed marriage in front of 3 town officials like he was negotiating a cattle sale. Sarah tugged on her sleeve. Miss Hartwell, you have to answer. I can't. He didn't. We never discussed. Do you want to keep us together? Sarah's voice cracked on the last word. Because if you say no, they're going to take us. Right now, I can see it on their faces. Eliza looked at the girl. 12 years old, already carrying weight no child should carry. Behind her, 5 other faces watched with the same desperate hope. She walked to the front door on legs that didn't feel like her own, opened it, stepped out into the cold morning air. All 4 men turned to look at her. Cole's expression was unreadable. Hayes looked uncomfortable. Brennan looked furious. Webb looked like he was calculating legal ramifications at lightning speed. Miss Hartwell, Brennan said, his voice dripping with condescension. Surely you can see how inappropriate this proposal is. Mr. Mercer is essentially asking you to enter into a marriage of convenience for the sake of, yes, Eliza said. Everyone stopped talking. Yes, Cole repeated, and for the first time that morning, he sounded uncertain. Yes, I'll marry you. Today. Right now. Whatever it takes. She looked at Brennan, then at Hayes. Unless the council has some objection to that? Webb opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. There are still questions of suitability, of Mr. Mercer's character, of whether this ranch is an appropriate environment. My character's fine, Cole said flatly. Ranch is solid. House needs work, but it's weatherproof. I've got income from the cattle, good water, enough land to expand if we need to. You want references? I can get you references. You want a home inspection? Inspect away. But you're not taking those kids, not today. Not ever. Hayes took off his hat, ran a hand through his thinning hair. This is highly irregular. So it was the fever that killed 17 people, Eliza said. So is shipping children away from the only home they've ever known. We're past regular, Sheriff. She's right, Cole added. Way I see it, you've got two choices. Option 1, you try to take the kids by force. I resist. This turns into something nobody wants. Option 2, Webb draws up guardianship papers. The sheriff performs a marriage. Everything's legal and proper, and the council can tell the town they did their due diligence. Which one makes more sense to you? The silence stretched. Eliza could hear her own heartbeat, loud and frantic. Behind her, 6 children were pressed against the windows, watching their fate get decided by men in a dusty yard. Finally, Hayes put his hat back on. Marcus, you got the paperwork for temporary guardianship? Webb fumbled with his folder. Yes, but it would need to be reviewed, approved by the full council. The full council authorized me to handle this situation as I saw fit. I'm seeing fit to accept Mr. Mercer's proposal. Hayes looked at Brennan. Unless you want to override my authority? Brennan's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. This is a mistake. These children need structure, discipline, proper Christian upbringing. They need to not be orphans getting shipped halfway across the country. Hayes cut him off. Mercer and Miss Hartwell are offering a home, a real one. That's more than we can give them. He turned to Cole. But I want to be clear. This isn't just signing some papers and walking away. You two are taking on legal responsibility for 6 children. That means feeding them, clothing them, educating them, keeping them safe. You fail at that, the territory can remove them. Understood? Understood, Cole said. Hayes looked at Eliza. Miss Hartwell? Understood. All right then, right. He gestured to Webb. Get the papers ready. We'll do this proper. What followed was the strangest hour of Eliza's life. Webb spread documents across the hood of his horse, his hands shaking slightly as he filled in names and dates. Hayes questioned Cole about his finances, his property, his background. Brennan stood off to the side, radiating disapproval so thick you could practically see it. Eliza went back inside to check on the children. They mobbed her the second she came through the door, all talking at once. Are you really getting married? What if they change their minds? Is Mr. Cole going to be our father? I need to use the privy, one at a time, Eliza said, her voice shaking. Yes, we're getting married. No, they're not changing their minds. Mr. Cole will be, well, I suppose he'll be something like a father. And Thomas, the privy is out back, past the barn. Sarah was the only one who stayed quiet. She watched Eliza with those 2 old eyes, understanding more than a 12-year-old should. You don't have to do this, she said softly. Not if you don't want to. I want to keep you together, all of you. Eliza knelt down, bringing herself to Sarah's level. This is the way to do that. But you don't love him. Love isn't always the point. The words came out harsher than she intended. She softened her voice. Sometimes the point is doing what's right, what's necessary. That's what Mama used to say. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Right before she died. Eliza pulled her close, feeling the girl's thin shoulders shake. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you had to lose her. Don't die, Sarah whispered against her shoulder. Please don't die too. I won't, I promise. Another promise she had no business making, but what else could she say? A knock at the door, Cole's voice. They're ready. Eliza stood, smoothing her dress. It was wrinkled, dirt-stained, completely inappropriate for a wedding. She'd imagined this day once, years ago. White dress, flowers, family gathered around. A man who loved her. A future built on more than desperation and legal necessity. Do I look all right? She asked Sarah. The girl managed a weak smile. You look brave. Outside, the men had arranged themselves into something resembling ceremony. Hayes stood with a small book, probably the civil code, Eliza thought, since there was no Bible in sight. Cole waited beside him, his hat in his hands. He'd wiped the dust off his face, but hadn't changed clothes. They were both dressed like they were about to mend a fence, not get married. The children filed out behind Eliza, staying close. Webb had finished the paperwork and stood clutching it like evidence at a trial. Brennan had mounted his horse, clearly planning to leave the second this farce was over. "All right," Hayes said, "let's make this quick. Cole Mercer, do you take Eliza Hartwell as your lawfully wedded wife to honor and protect according to the laws of Wyoming Territory?" "I do." His voice was steady, calm, like he'd just agreed to buy a horse, not bind his life to a stranger's. Hayes turned to Eliza. "Eliza Hartwell, do you take Cole Mercer as your lawfully wedded husband to honor and respect according to the laws of Wyoming Territory?" The words stuck in her throat. This was insane. She'd known this man for less than 24 hours. She didn't know his history, his character, his intentions. He could be cruel, violent, dangerous. She was gambling everything on a stranger's offer made in the middle of a dusty street. She looked at the children, 6 faces, watching her with desperate hope. "I do." "Then by the authority vested in me by Wyoming Territory, I pronounce you husband and wife." Hayes snapped the book shut. "Congratulations. Try not to kill each other." It was possibly the least romantic wedding in the history of marriage. No kiss, no cheering, no celebration. Just Webb shoving papers at them to sign, Brennan riding off in disgust, and Hayes looking like he regretted every decision that had led to this moment. "The guardianship papers grant you temporary custody for 6 months, Webb explained, pointing at various lines. "After that, you'll need to appear before a judge to make it permanent. The territory will conduct periodic checks to ensure the children are being properly cared for. Any signs of neglect or abuse? There won't be," Cole said shortly. He signed his name with quick, harsh strokes. Eliza signed beneath him. Her hand was shaking so badly the signature looked like a child had written it. "Mrs. Cole Mercer," she thought distantly. "That's who I am now." Webb gathered up the papers. Hayes tipped his hat. "I'll be back in a month to check on things. Keep them fed, keep them safe. Don't make me regret this." They rode away, leaving a trail of dust that hung in the still morning air. Eliza stood beside her new husband, watching them disappear. Neither of them spoke. Behind them, the children were silent too, like they were all waiting for someone to explain what happened next. Finally, Cole put his hat back on. "Well, that was something." "Yes." "You hungry? Kids probably are." "I imagine so." They stood there awkwardly for another moment. Then Cole turned toward the house. "Come on, let's get breakfast started. We've got work to do." The children followed him like ducklings, still quiet but less scared. Eliza trailed behind, her mind spinning. She was married, to a stranger, who now had legal authority over her and 6 children. She'd either just saved 6 lives or made the worst mistake of her own. Inside, Cole was already pulling food from the pantry, flour, eggs from somewhere, bacon that had seen better days. He moved around the kitchen with surprising efficiency, like he'd been cooking for a crowd his whole life instead of living alone for 5 years. "Sarah, can you set the table?" he asked. "James, I need you to fetch more water from the creek. Rest of you, find something to do that's not standing in the way." They scattered, grateful for direction. Eliza watched him work, trying to figure out who this man was. He cooked like someone who'd learned out of necessity, not love, functional, efficient, no wasted movement. He didn't talk to the children like they were children, exactly, more like small adults who needed specific instructions. "You just going to stand there?" he asked without looking up. "I don't know what to do." "Neither do I." He cracked eggs into a pan, the shells breaking cleanly. "But standing around worrying about it won't help. Grab that knife, start slicing bread." She did as he said, falling into the familiar rhythm of kitchen work. They moved around each other carefully, strangers sharing space. The children drifted back one by one, James with water, Sarah with the table set, the twins with wildflowers they'd found behind the house. Breakfast was simple: eggs, bacon, bread toasted over the fire. Cole divided everything into even portions, making sure the smallest kids got enough. Nobody talked much. They were all too exhausted, too overwhelmed by the morning's events. When they'd finished eating, Cole pushed back from the table. "All right, here's how this is going to work. This ranch doesn't run itself. I've got cattle to check, fences to mend, 100 other things that need doing. You kids are going to help, not because I need free labor, I can hire hands if I want, but because if you're living here, you pull your weight. Understood?" 6 nods. Good. James, Thomas, you're with me today. I'll teach you basic ranch work. Sarah, Emma. Miss Hart. He stopped. What do I call you now? Eliza blinked. Eliza paused. I don't know. Mrs. Mercer sounds wrong. Eliza then, when it's just us. He turned back to the girls. Sarah, Emma. Eliza will show you how things work in the house. Lucy, Grace. You two are on egg duty. There's chickens out back. They need feeding, and their eggs need collecting. I'm scared of chickens, Lucy whispered. Then you'll get over it. Chickens are mean, but they're small. You're bigger. He stood, grabbing his hat. We've got about 6 hours of daylight left. Let's not waste them. The next few hours were chaos. Cole took the boys out to check fences, leaving Eliza with the girls in a house that looked like it hadn't been properly cleaned in years. She found soap, rags, a broom with half its bristles missing. Sarah threw herself into the work with frightening intensity, scrubbing like she could erase everything that had happened. Emma moved slowly, mechanically, still mostly silent. The twins chased chickens and shrieked when the birds fought back. By midday, the house looked marginally better. The floors were swept, the dishes clean, the fireplace cleared of ash. Eliza's back ached and her hands were raw, but there was something satisfying about it. Physical work, tangible results. She was hanging laundry, mostly children's clothes, pitifully small, when she heard shouting from the barn. She dropped the shirt she was holding and ran. Sarah was right behind her, always alert for danger. They rounded the corner to find Cole holding Thomas by the back of his shirt, the boy's face bright red and angry. James stood off to the side, looking guilty. What happened? Eliza demanded. Your son, Cole said, his voice tight with frustration, decided to ignore every instruction I gave him and nearly got himself kicked by a horse. He's not my son, Eliza started, then stopped. Legally, he was. They all were. Thomas, what were you thinking? I wasn't scared, Thomas shouted, fighting against Cole's grip. He said I'd be scared, but I'm not. Being brave and being stupid are different things, Cole said. I told you to approach from the side. You walked up behind a horse that doesn't know you. You're lucky all you got was a scare. I hate you, Thomas kicked backward, missing Cole's shin by inches. I hate this place. I want to go home. Cole set him down but didn't let go. You don't have a home. This is it. And you can hate me all you want, but you're going to follow the rules, because next time it won't be a scare. It'll be a broken skull. Thomas burst into tears, real ones, not angry ones, the kind that came from somewhere deep and broken. Cole looked momentarily lost, like he'd just won an argument but didn't know what to do with the victory. Eliza stepped in, pulling Thomas away. The boy collapsed against her, sobbing into her dress. She held him, meeting Cole's eyes over his head. He's 6 years old, she said quietly. He just lost his parents. Maybe go a little easier? Going easier gets him killed. This isn't a schoolroom, Eliza. This is a working ranch. These kids need to learn fast or they'll get hurt. But his voice had softened slightly. James, go inside. Take your brother. We're done for today. James grabbed Thomas's hand and led him away, both boys walking with their shoulders hunched. Eliza stayed where she was, anger and exhaustion warring in her chest. You can't just bark orders at them like they're employees, she said. I'm not. I'm teaching them how to survive here. They're traumatized children, not ranch hands. They're both. And the sooner they figure that out, the safer they'll be. Cole pulled off his hat, ran a hand through his hair. Look, I know this isn't easy, for any of us, but I'm doing my best here. Are you? The question came out sharper than she meant it. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're treating them like a problem to solve instead of people who are hurting. His jaw tightened. You want to know why I'm hard on them? Because I know what happens when kids don't learn to respect danger. I've seen it. Kids who thought they were brave, thought they knew better, thought the rules didn't apply. They end up dead. Or worse. Worse than dead? Yeah. Broken. Used up. Thrown away when they're not useful anymore. He shoved his hat back on. I'm trying to keep that from happening. If that makes me the bad guy in your book, fine, I can live with that. He walked away before she could respond, heading toward the barn. Eliza stood in the yard, her dress covered in Thomas's tears and snot, her carefully constructed image of how this would work crumbling around her. This was going to be harder than she'd thought. So much harder. That night, she lay in her small bedroom, listening to the house settle. Cole's room was on the other side of the wall. She could hear him moving around, the creak of bed springs as he sat down. The children were quiet for once, worn out from the day's events. She thought about her wedding day, the vows she'd made, the signatures on those papers that bound her to a man she barely knew, the weight of 6 lives depending on her to make this work. Sleep was a long time coming. When it finally arrived, it brought dreams of orphan trains and angry horses and a town council that wouldn't stop knocking on the door. In the dreams, she kept signing her name over and over, but the ink wouldn't stick. The words kept fading until there was nothing left but blank paper and the sound of children crying. She woke to gray dawn light and the smell of coffee. Cole was already up, already working. The children were stirring. Another day was starting, and somehow, impossibly, they had to figure out how to be a family. The coffee was bitter enough to strip paint, but Eliza drank it anyway. She stood at the kitchen window watching Cole work in the corral, his movements efficient and deliberate as he checked a horse's hooves. 3 weeks had passed since the wedding that wasn't really a wedding, and they'd settled into a routine that felt less like family and more like a carefully negotiated truce. Behind her, Sarah was measuring flour for biscuits. The girl had thrown herself into household tasks with the intensity of someone trying to prove her worth, working until her hands cracked and bled. No amount of telling her to slow down made a difference. "You don't have to make breakfast every morning," Eliza said, not for the first time. "I know." Sarah's voice was flat. "But if I don't stay busy, I think too much." There wasn't much to say to that. Eliza understood. She'd been thinking too much herself lately, lying awake in her narrow bed, listening to Cole move around on the other side of the wall. They barely spoke beyond logistics. Who was doing what? Who needed what? Whether the supplies would last another week. They circled each other like strangers in a boarding house, polite and distant. The front door banged open. James stumbled in, his lip bleeding, Thomas right behind him looking guilty as sin. "What happened?" Eliza set down her coffee. "Nothing," James muttered. "Doesn't look like nothing." She grabbed a cloth, dampened it, pressed it against his mouth. "Thomas?" The younger boy stared at his feet. "We were playing. He said I couldn't do something, and I said I could, and then we fought," Sarah finished, not looking up from her flour. "They've been fighting every morning for a week." "It's not fighting," James protested around the cloth. "It's just fighting," Eliza said firmly. "Thomas, sit down, both of you. We're going to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." James pulled away from her, his eyes hot with anger. "I'm fine. He's fine. Can we just forget it?" "No, we can't. You can't keep—" The door opened again. Cole came in, took one look at James's bloody lip, and his expression went flat. "Outside," he said to both boys. "Now." They went without argument, which told Eliza this wasn't the first time. She followed them out, Sarah trailing behind despite Eliza's gesture for her to stay inside. The other children had emerged from various corners of the property. Emma from the chicken coop, the twins from behind the barn where they'd been playing some elaborate game involving sticks and rocks. Cole stood in the yard, arms crossed. "This the 3rd time this week?" "Yes, sir," James said quietly. "And I told you what would happen if it happened again." "Yes, sir." "Then you know what comes next." Cole walked to the barn, came back with 2 shovels, handed one to each boy. "See that fence line running west? The posts are rotting. I need them dug up and replaced. All 30 of them. You 2 are going to do it. Together." Thomas's face crumpled. "But that'll take all day." "Probably take 2 days, given your size. Better get started." Cole's voice was ice. "And if I hear you fighting while you work, you'll dig twice as many. Understand?" Both boys nodded miserably and trudged off toward the fence line, dragging their shovels. Eliza waited until they were out of earshot before turning on Cole. "That's too harsh. They're children, not convicts. They're children who need to learn that actions have consequences. They're grieving. So they get to beat each other bloody? That's your idea of healthy grieving?" Cole's jaw was tight. "They fight because they're angry and scared and don't know what to do with it. Fine, I get that. But I'm not letting them hurt each other. Hard work burns off anger better than anything else I know. There are other ways. Yeah? Like what? Sitting them down for a nice talk about their feelings? He said it with enough contempt to make her flinch. That work in your schoolroom, maybe. Not here. Here, they need structure, rules, work that makes them too tired to think about how much everything hurts. That's not fair. Life's not fair. They already learned that lesson. He turned to the other children, his voice gentling slightly. Rest of you, chores. Sarah, finish breakfast. Emma, eggs. Twins, I need you to weed the garden. It's getting out of hand. They scattered. Cole started to walk away, but Eliza grabbed his arm. He stopped, looking down at her hand on his sleeve like it was something foreign. We need to talk, she said. About what? About how we're raising these children. We can't keep contradicting each other. I'm not contradicting you. I'm doing what needs to be done. Without consulting me. You want to consult? Fine. I consulted. My answer is the boys work the fence line. He pulled his arm free. You got a better punishment? I'm listening. She didn't. That was the problem. Everything she knew about managing children came from a classroom where the worst offense was talking out of turn. This was different. Bigger. Messier. She had no idea how to handle brothers who fought because they'd watched their parents die. A girl who worked herself to exhaustion. Another who barely spoke. And twins who still cried for their mother at night. I don't know what to do, she admitted. But neither do you. No, I don't. His voice softened a fraction. But at least I'm trying something instead of wringing my hands about it. He left her standing in the yard, feeling useless and angry and overwhelmed. Sarah appeared at her elbow, quiet as a ghost. He's not wrong, the girl said. Sarah, James and Thomas need to work it out. Talking won't help. They're too mad. She looked toward the fence line where the boys were already digging, their movements jerky with resentment. When Papa died in the mines, Mama said the only thing that helped was keeping busy. Maybe Mr. Cole's right. Your mother also said other things, I'm sure, about kindness, compassion. She said those too, but she also said sometimes you have to be hard to be kind. Sarah turned those two old eyes on Eliza. I think that's what he's trying to do, even if he's not very good at it. Out of the mouths of children. Eliza watched Sarah go back to the kitchen, her thin shoulders carrying weight no 12-year-old should bear. How had this happened? 3 weeks ago, she'd been a school teacher with a simple life. Now she was married to a stranger, trying to raise 6 damaged kids and failing at both. The day dragged on. Eliza threw herself into work, cleaning, cooking, mending clothes that had more holes than fabric. Emma finally spoke around midday, announcing that one of the chickens was sick. Eliza had no idea what to do about a sick chicken, so she found Cole in the barn. Emma says there's a sick chicken. He didn't look up from the harness he was mending. Which one? The brown one? They're all brown. He set down his tools with a sigh. Show me. They walked to the coop together, Emma trailing behind. The sick chicken was obvious, hunched in a corner, feathers ruffled, eyes half closed. Cole picked it up gently, examined it with practiced hands. Mites, he said. Common this time of year. Emma, you did good noticing. We'll need to treat the whole coop, or they'll all get it. Will she die? Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Not if we catch it early. Cole looked at the girl, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. You like the chickens? Emma nodded. They your job now, then. I'll teach you how to care for them proper. Keep them healthy. He handed her the sick bird carefully. This one needs to be separated. Think you can set up a small pen? Another nod, more enthusiastic this time. Good, I'll get you what you need. He stood, brushing dust off his pants. To Eliza, he said, she needs something to care for, something smaller than her that depends on her. Helps. It was the most he'd said to her all day that wasn't about work assignments or meal times. She watched him walk Emma through setting up a quarantine pen, his voice patient and clear. With the children, he had a kind of rough competence. With her, he had polite distance. That night at dinner, beans and cornbread, supplies were running low. The twins started fighting over who got the bigger piece. Before Eliza could intervene, Cole simply switched their plates. There. Now you both have what the other one had. Problem solved. Lucy stared at her plate, now containing the smaller piece she'd been complaining about. But you wanted what she had. Now you got it. Eat, Grace giggled. Even Lucy cracked a smile. Crisis averted with neither discussion nor punishment, just simple logic. Eliza hated how effective it was. After dinner, she found James and Thomas collapsed in the yard, covered in dirt and sweat. They'd managed to dig up 8 posts, a quarter of what needed doing. Both looked ready to cry from exhaustion. "We can't finish," James said, his voice breaking. "We're too tired." "Then you'll finish tomorrow." Cole appeared with water, handed it to both boys. "Drink, then go wash up. You worked hard today." "Are you still mad?" Thomas asked. "I was never mad. I was teaching you something." Cole crouched down to their level. "You two are brothers now. Maybe not by blood, but by everything that matters. Brothers fight sometimes. That's normal. But you don't hurt each other. Not here. We've all been hurt enough. This place is supposed to be different, safe. Can you understand that?" Both boys nodded, too tired to argue. "Good. Now go on. Sarah saved you some dinner." They trudged inside, leaning on each other. Eliza watched them go, something tight in her chest loosening slightly. "You were right," she said to Cole. "About the work. It helped." "Sometimes." He stood, his knees cracking. "Not always. But today it did." They stood in the gathering darkness, the first stars coming out overhead. Somewhere in the house, Sarah was getting the twins ready for bed. Emma was probably checking on her sick chicken one more time. James and Thomas were eating, their fight already fading into memory. "We're terrible at this," Eliza said. "Yeah. The judge is going to take one look at us in 6 months and send those kids straight to the nearest orphanage." "Probably." "You're not helping. Not trying to." But there was something almost like humor in his voice. "You want reassurance? Go talk to Sarah. She thinks you hung the moon. Sarah thinks I'm trying my best and failing. That's more than most people get." Cole picked up the water bucket, started toward the barn. "Get some sleep, Eliza. Tomorrow's not going to be easier." He was right about that. Tomorrow brought a dust storm that kept them all trapped inside. 6 restless children and 2 adults who ran out of things to say to each other after 10 minutes. The day after, Emma's chicken died despite treatment, sending her into silent tears that lasted hours. The day after that, the twins got into the flower bin and created a disaster that took 3 people to clean up. But there were good moments too, small ones. James teaching Thomas how to whistle. Sarah laughing at something Emma said. The first real laugh Eliza had heard from her. Cole showing the boys how to throw a rope, patient through 40 failed attempts. The twins discovering a family of rabbits near the creek and spending an entire afternoon watching them. A month became 6 weeks. 6 weeks became 2 months. The ranch didn't get easier, but they got better at it. The children stopped flinching every time someone raised their voice. They started fighting over chores instead of avoiding them. They complained about the food, which meant they felt safe enough to complain. And slowly, carefully, Eliza and Cole learned to work together. Not smoothly. They still argued about discipline, about schedules, about whether the children needed more structure or more freedom. But they argued instead of avoiding each other, which felt like progress. One evening in late summer, Sheriff Hayes showed up unannounced. Eliza's heart jumped into her throat when she saw him riding up, but the children barely reacted. They'd grown used to visitors, ranch hands looking for work, neighbors borrowing tools, the occasional traveling salesman. "Sheriff," Cole said, coming out to meet him. "This official or social?" "Bit of both." Hayes dismounted, looking around the property. His eyes cataloged everything, the mended fences, the weeded garden, the children working together to feed the chickens. "Council asked me to check on the situation, make sure everything's appropriate. And it looks better than I expected." Hayes walked toward the house, Cole and Eliza following. "Kids look healthy, property's well maintained, no signs of neglect or abuse." "Did you expect signs?" Eliza asked, sharper than she meant to. "Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. Arranged marriage, 6 orphans, stranger offering help out of nowhere. It had all the makings of a disaster." He paused at the porch, watching Thomas try to climb onto a fence rail while James spotted him. "But I'll admit when I'm wrong. You two have done better than most people could have. We're trying, Cole said. I can see that. Hayes pulled out a folded paper. This is the preliminary report I'm filing. It's favorable. Judge will still need to review everything in a few months, but unless something changes, I don't see any reason he wouldn't make the guardianship permanent. Eliza took the paper with shaking hands. Favorable. After 2 months of doubt and struggle and wondering if every mistake would be the one that cost them everything, someone official had looked at their chaotic household and called it favorable. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me. You did the work. Hayes tipped his hat. I'll be back in 6 weeks for another check. Keep doing what you're doing. He rode away, leaving them standing on the porch. Eliza read the report 3 times, making sure she hadn't imagined the positive assessment. Cole stood beside her, silent. We might actually pull this off, she said. Maybe. You don't sound convinced. I'm convinced we're doing our best. That's all we can do. He took the report, folded it carefully. But there's still 4 months before the judge makes his decision. A lot can happen in 4 months. He was right to be cautious. 2 weeks later, Emma got sick, really sick, not just a cold. Fever that spiked high enough to scare them both. Coughing that sounded like it was tearing her apart. Cole rode to town for the doctor while Eliza sat up with the girl, sponging her forehead, trying not to remember what fever had taken from these children before. The other kids gathered around Emma's makeshift bed, their faces pale and frightened. Sarah held the twins while they cried. James and Thomas sat against the wall, silent and tense. Is she going to die like Mama? Lucy whispered. No, Eliza said, with more confidence than she felt. The doctor's coming. She's going to be fine. Dr. Morrison arrived looking grim, but moved with efficiency. He examined Emma, asked questions, mixed medicine. Pneumonia, he said. Serious, but treatable. She'd need constant care for the next few days. I can stay, he offered. No need, Cole said. We'll manage. They managed. Barely. Eliza and Cole took turns sitting up with Emma, sleeping in shift. The other children tried to help, bringing water, keeping quiet, staying out of the way. On the 3rd night, Emma's fever finally broke. She opened her eyes, looked at Eliza, and whispered, I'm thirsty. Eliza cried, just broke down and cried with relief and exhaustion and the terrible fear of almost losing another child to disease. Cole found her like that an hour later, sitting on the porch in the dark, her face wet with tears. He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Didn't say anything, just sat there while she cried herself out. I can't do this again, she said finally. Watching a child that sick, not knowing if they'll make it. I can't. You can. You did. What if next time we're not so lucky? Then we deal with it. Together. He said it simply, like it was obvious. That's what we do now, deal with things together. She looked at him, really looked at him, in the dim light from the house. His face was shadowed, tired, marked by the same sleepless nights she'd endured. Somewhere in the last 2 months, he'd stopped being a stranger. Not quite a friend, not quite a partner, but something. Someone who stood beside her when things went bad. Someone who didn't run. Thank you, she said. For staying, for helping, for not giving up on this mess. Could say the same to you. He stood, offered his hand. Come on. Emma's asking for you. Inside, the children were awake despite the late hour. Emma sat propped against pillows, still pale but smiling weakly. The twins had climbed into bed with her, careful of her sore ribs. Sarah hovered nearby with water. The boys sat at the foot of the bed, looking relieved. We thought you died, Thomas said bluntly. Almost did, Emma whispered. But I'm not going anywhere. Good, James said, because we need you for chicken duty. Everyone laughed, soft, tired, grateful laughter. The kind that comes after disaster has been narrowly avoided. Eliza looked around at these 6 faces and felt something shift in her chest. They weren't her children, not by blood, but they were hers in every way that mattered. The next morning she found Cole in the barn mending tack. She'd been thinking all night about what to say, how to bridge the gap that still existed between them. We should talk, she said. He looked up warily. About? About us. This arrangement. How it's working. It's working fine. Is it? She sat down on a hay bale, choosing her words carefully. We live together. We raise children together. We make decisions together. But we barely talk to each other. We're strangers who happen to share a house. What do you want me to say? That I trust you? I do. That you're doing a good job with the kids? You are. That this whole thing is less of a disaster than I thought it would be? It is. He set down the tack. What else is there? I don't know. Something more than just coexistence. Cole was quiet for a long moment. I'm not good at this. Talking, sharing, all the things people are supposed to do when they're... He stopped. Married, Eliza finished. Yeah, that. He rubbed the back of his neck. I agreed to this because it was the right thing to do, because those kids needed help and you were the only one brave enough to fight for them. But I didn't agree to it thinking we'd become whatever it is people become when they actually choose each other. Neither did I, Eliza admitted. But we're here anyway, living this life. Maybe we should try to make it more than just an arrangement. How? I don't know. Start smaller. Tell me something about yourself. Something real. He looked uncomfortable, like she'd asked him to strip naked in the town square. Like what? Anything. Where you came from. Why you're here alone. That scar on your face. Where'd it come from? That's 3 things. Pick one. He sighed, sat down on the hay bale across from her. I came from Missouri. Had a family there. Parents, 2 younger sisters. Lost them all to cholera when I was 19. Sold the farm, headed west, ended up here. The scars from a fight over a card game in Cheyenne. I won the fight, lost the game, decided to stop gambling. That good enough? It was more than he'd said to her in 2 months. The sisters, what were their names? Mary and Beth. Mary was 15, Beth was 12. His voice went flat. Same age as Sarah. That's why when I saw you with those kids, heard what the council wanted to do, I couldn't just walk away. Mary and Beth didn't get a chance. Maybe these kids could. Liza's throat tightened. I'm sorry for your loss. It was a long time ago. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, he agreed. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the children were playing some complicated game that involved a lot of running and shouting. Normal sounds. Happy sounds. My turn, Cole said. Tell me something real. Eliza thought about it. I never wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a doctor. But women don't become doctors. Not where I'm from. So I became a teacher instead because it was the closest I could get to doing something that mattered. You could still study medicine, plenty of books on it. And do what with it? Hang a shingle and watch the town run me out? Run a ranch. Accidents happen. Animals get sick. Kids get pneumonia. He met her eyes. You could matter here, if you wanted to. It was such a simple statement, but it hit her hard. She could matter here. Did matter here. Not as someone's daughter or someone's teacher or someone's wife, but as herself. As Eliza. Yeah, she said softly. I could. They worked side by side the rest of the morning, talking more easily than they ever had. About small things, weather, crops, which children needed new shoes, but also bigger things, hopes, fears. The judge's upcoming decision. Whether 6 traumatized kids and 2 incompatible adults could somehow build something lasting. By the time lunch rolled around, Eliza felt like she'd taken a step forward, not a big one, just enough to see the path ahead a little more clearly. That afternoon, she found Sarah in the garden, viciously pulling weeds like they'd personally offended her. Want to talk about it? Eliza asked. About what? Whatever's making you attack those weeds like they killed your family. Sarah sat back, dirt on her face and hands. I heard you and Mr. Cole talking this morning. In the barn. It wasn't private. I know, I wasn't trying to listen, but I heard. The girl twisted a weed between her fingers. He lost his sisters. You lost your dream. We all lost our families. Is that what we are? Just a bunch of broken people trying to pretend we're not? Eliza sat down in the dirt beside her. Maybe. But broken doesn't mean useless. Doesn't mean we can't build something new. What if we can't? What if the judge looks at us and sees exactly what we are? A fake family held together by legal papers and desperation. Then we fight. We show him we're more than that. Are we? It was the question Eliza had been asking herself for months. Were they more than a convenience arrangement? More than strangers sharing space? She looked toward the house where Cole was teaching the boys how to fix a broken chair leg, at Emma collecting eggs, talking softly to her chickens, at the twins building elaborate structures from sticks and mud. I think we might be, she said. Not perfect, not what anyone would choose if they had better options, but real. That counts for something. Sarah pulled another weed, gentler this time. I hope you're right. Me too. That evening, after the children were asleep, Eliza and Cole sat on the porch watching stars emerge. It had become a habit, this quiet time after the chaos of the day, when they could breathe without 6 pairs of eyes watching their every move. Emma's doing better, Cole said. Might be well enough to help with chores tomorrow. Let's give her another day. She needs rest. Fair enough. He was quiet for a moment. Hayes comes back in 4 weeks. I know. We should be ready. Make sure everything's perfect. Eliza shook her head. It won't be perfect, it can't be, but it can be good enough. Think the judge will see it that way? I don't know, but I know we've done everything we can. These kids are fed, clothed, sheltered, they're learning, they're healing. That has to count for something. Hope you're right. They fell silent again, comfortable in a way they hadn't been before. Somewhere between the arguments and the crises and the small daily victories, they'd learned to exist in the same space without friction. Eliza? Cole's voice was different, uncertain in a way she'd never heard before. Yeah? Earlier, when you said we should try to make this more than an arrangement, what did you mean? She considered her words carefully. I meant maybe we could try being actual partners, not just 2 people raising kids together, but a team. People who trust each other, maybe even like each other. I already trust you. And the liking part? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, you're stubborn, self-righteous, and you question everything I do. So that's a no? That's a, you're also brave as hell, smarter than you give yourself credit for, and those kids would walk through fire for you. So yeah, I like you fine. It wasn't a declaration of love, wasn't even particularly romantic. But coming from Cole Mercer, a man who treated words like currency to be spent carefully, it felt like more. I like you too, she said. Most days. He laughed, an actual laugh, rough and surprised. Most days is better than I usually get. The stars wheeled overhead. Inside, one of the children cried out in their sleep, then settled. The ranch settled around them, creaking and sighing. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new crises, new reasons to wonder if they were completely out of their depth. But tonight, sitting on this porch with a man who'd become something close to a friend, Eliza felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Hope lasted exactly 11 days. That's when Cole came back from town with news that made Eliza's stomach drop straight through the floor. He stood in the kitchen, hat still in his hands, his face carved from granite. Judge moved up the hearing, he said. It's in 2 weeks. 2 weeks? Eliza set down the pot she'd been scrubbing. But we were supposed to have 4 more months. Council petitioned for early review, said they had concerns about the arrangement. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. Brennan's been talking, spreading rumors. Sarah looked up from where she was helping the twins with their letters. What kind of rumors? The kind that make us look bad. Cole tossed his hat onto the table harder than necessary. Nothing specific enough to counter, just whispers. That we're not really married, that the kids are being worked too hard, that the whole thing's a scheme to get cheap labor. That's insane, Eliza said. Anyone who's been here can see, yeah, well, most people haven't been here. They're just listening to Brennan paint pictures. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Hayes tried to fight it, said his reports were all positive, but the council's got influence and they want this resolved. The judge agreed. 2 weeks. Eliza's mind spun. 2 weeks to prove they were a real family, not a legal fiction. 2 weeks to convince a judge that 6 traumatized children were better off on a struggling ranch than in proper homes back east. What do we do? She asked. We get ready. Make sure everything's perfect when the judge arrives. Show him happy, healthy kids, a functioning household, a real marriage. Cole said those last words carefully, watching her face. We have a real marriage, legally. That's not what he means, Sarah said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. The girl met their eyes steadily. He means we have to look like a real family, not just people living in the same house. Out of the mouths of children, again. Eliza wanted to argue, but Sarah was right. They'd built something functional, maybe even good. But did it look like family from the outside? Or did it look like exactly what it was? A desperate arrangement held together by legal papers and mutual necessity. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Eliza stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out what a real family was supposed to look like. Her own parents had been cold, formal people who treated child raising like a duty to be checked off a list. Cole's family was gone, buried under Missouri dirt. The children's families had been torn apart by fever and mining accidents and bad luck. Maybe nobody knew what a real family looked like. Maybe they all just made it up as they went along and hoped it was good enough. The next morning, she found Cole already up, writing a list of repairs that needed doing before the judge's visit. The fence was still sagging in spots. The barn door stuck. One of the porch steps was loose. 2 weeks to make a struggling ranch look like a thriving home. We need to talk about the sleeping arrangements, Cole said without looking up. What about them? Judge is going to notice we sleep in separate rooms. Eliza's stomach tightened. We're married. Plenty of married people sleep separately. Yeah, rich people in big houses, not ranchers in a 4-room cabin. He set down his pencil. I'm not saying we have to. I mean, we could just, He stopped, clearly uncomfortable. We could make it look like we share a room. Move my things into yours, sleep on the floor. Judge won't know the difference. Or we could tell him the truth, that this is a marriage of convenience and we're making it work despite that. And watch him put those kids on the next train east? No thanks. Cole stood, grabbing his hat. I'll move my stuff tonight. You can have the bed. I've slept on worse than wood floors. He left before she could argue. Through the window, Eliza watched him head toward the barn, his shoulders tight with tension. This whole thing was spinning out of control, and she had no idea how to stop it. Sarah appeared at her elbow. He's scared. What? Mr. Cole. He's scared the judge will take us away. Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was commenting on the weather. That's why he's being strange. How do you know that? Because I'm scared too. We all are. She looked toward where the other children were doing morning chores. This is the first place that's felt safe since Mama died. If we lose it, if they send us away, I don't think I can do it again. Start over somewhere else. Eliza pulled the girl into a hug, feeling her thin frame shake. You're not going anywhere. I won't let them take you. You can't promise that. Watch me. But promises felt hollow against the weight of what they were facing. A judge who didn't know them. A council that wanted them gone. 2 weeks to transform a makeshift household into something worth preserving. The days blurred together in a frenzy of preparation. Cole worked from dawn until long after dark, fixing everything that could be fixed. The boys helped, learning more about carpentry and ranch maintenance in a week than most kids learned in a year. Sarah scrubbed the house until it gleamed, her hands raw from lye soap. Emma organized the chickens like they were going to be inspected for military service. The twins picked flowers and arranged them in jars around the house, making everything look softer, more lived in. Eliza threw herself into cooking, determined to have a well-stocked pantry when the judge arrived. She baked bread until her arms ached, canned vegetables from the garden, made preserves from wild berries the twins found by the creek. If the judge wanted evidence of a functioning household, she'd bury him in it. A week before the hearing, Cole moved his belongings into her room. It was awkward and strange watching him carry his few possessions across the house. He didn't have much, some clothes, a few books, a wooden box he didn't open. He set everything in the corner, careful not to take up too much space. I'll sleep on the floor, he said, spreading a bedroll. Won't bother you. This is ridiculous, Eliza said. You're going to destroy your back sleeping on wood for a week just to maintain appearances. Got a better idea? She didn't. That was the problem. Every solution felt wrong, but doing nothing felt worse. They were trapped between honesty and necessity, and neither option was comfortable. That night she lay in bed listening to Cole shift on the hard floor below. He was trying to be quiet, but she could hear every movement, every uncomfortable adjustment. After an hour of this, she couldn't take it anymore. Cole? Yeah? This is stupid. Just sleep in the bed. It's big enough for two if we stay on our sides. Silence. Then, you sure? No, but I'm tired and you're clearly not going to get any rest down there, which means you'll be useless tomorrow, which means more work for me. So yes, get up here. He climbed into bed carefully, staying so far on his side he was practically falling off the edge. They lay there like two boards, rigid and uncomfortable, staring at the ceiling. This is worse, Cole said after a minute. So much worse. We could go back to... No, we're adults. We can share a bed without making it weird. Even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. Everything about this was weird. But weird was better than a judge deciding their household was inappropriate. Eventually, exhaustion won over awkwardness. Eliza drifted off, hyper-aware of the man beside her, but too tired to care. She woke once in the night to find she'd rolled toward the center, her hand touching Cole's shoulder. She jerked back to her side, heart pounding, but he didn't wake. Or if he did, he didn't say anything. Morning came too fast. Cole was already up and dressed by the time she opened her eyes, like he'd been waiting for her to wake so he could escape. They didn't talk about it. Just went about their day like nothing had changed, even though everything felt different. Sheriff Hayes showed up 3 days before the hearing, unannounced again. Eliza's heart jumped, but Cole just nodded like he'd been expecting it. Judge asked me to do a final inspection, Hayes said, dismounting. Make sure nothing's changed since my last visit. Changed how? Eliza asked, hearing the defensive edge in her voice. Relax, Miss Hart, Mrs. Mercer. Hayes corrected himself with a slight smile. Just a formality. Mind if I look around? They gave him the tour, the barn with its mended roof, the garden bursting with vegetables, the chicken coop where Emma had organized everything with military precision, the children's sleeping area, neat and clean, the kitchen with its stocked pantry, everything they'd worked so hard to perfect. Hayes took notes, his expression neutral. When they reached the bedroom Eliza and Cole now shared, he paused. This is where you both sleep? Yes, Cole said evenly. Hayes looked at the single bed, the bedroll still on the floor from before they'd started sharing, Cole's belongings in the corner. His eyes were sharp, cataloging everything. Eliza held her breath. Cozy, Hayes said finally, and moved on. They finished the tour back at the porch. Hayes flipped through his notes, frowning slightly. I have to ask, this hearing, are you worried? Should we be? Cole's voice was carefully neutral. Honestly, I don't know. You've done everything right. Kids are thriving, property's well maintained, but Brennan's been vocal about his objections, and Judge Patterson tends to be conservative in these matters. Hayes tucked his notebook away. He's going to ask hard questions about your marriage, your intentions, whether this arrangement is truly in the children's best interest. And what do you think? Eliza asked. Hayes looked at her, then at Cole, then toward where the children were working together to hang laundry, even the boys helping without complaint, talking and laughing like actual siblings. I think you've done something remarkable here. Whether it's enough, he shrugged. That's up to the judge. After he left, Eliza sat on the porch steps, her head in her hands. Cole sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. We're going to lose them, she said. Maybe. That's not helpful. Neither is panicking. But his voice was tight, scared. We've done everything we can. Made this place as good as it can be. Shown that the kids are happy, healthy, safe. What else is there? I don't know. Something more. Something that proves we're not just going through the motions. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then, there might be one thing. What? The judge is going to ask the kids questions, probably separately so they can speak freely. He'll want to know if they feel safe here, if they're being treated well, if they want to stay. Of course they'll say yes. Will they? Cole turned to look at her. Think about it. 6 kids who've been bounced around, who watched their parents die, who ended up with two strangers who argue half the time and barely know how to be in the same room together. You think they feel secure in that? The words hit like a slap. We've given them everything. We've given them shelter and food and rules. That's not the same as security, not the same as family. He stood, pacing the porch. They need to know we're committed to this, not just to them, but to each other. That this isn't temporary. That we're not going to fall apart the second things get hard. We're already doing that. Are we? Or are we just white-knuckling our way through until the judge makes his decision? He stopped pacing, faced her. Be honest. If the judge rules against us tomorrow, what happens to us? Do we stay married, keep living together, or do we shake hands and go our separate ways? Eliza opened her mouth, closed it. She had no idea how to answer that question. Right, Cole said quietly. That's what I thought. He walked away, leaving her sitting on the porch with a sick feeling in her stomach. Because he was right. They'd built something functional, maybe even good. But it was built on sand, and the tide was coming in. That night, after the children were asleep, Eliza found Cole in the barn. He was mending tack by lamplight, his movements sharp and frustrated. We need to talk, she said. Not in the mood. Too bad. She sat down across from him. You were right, earlier, about us not being committed to each other, just to the kids. Didn't ask for validation. I'm not giving you validation. I'm agreeing with your assessment and suggesting we fix it. She took a breath. We have 2 days. 2 days to convince a judge that we're a real family, and the only way to do that is to actually become one. Cole set down the tack. And how do you propose we do that? I don't know. Stop treating each other like business partners. Start acting like people who chose this, who want this. She met his eyes. We don't have to love each other, but we should at least like each other enough to make this convincing. I already told you I like you. In the same breath, you called me stubborn and self-righteous. You are stubborn and self-righteous. But there was something almost fond in his voice. You're also the bravest person I've ever met. You took on 6 kids and a failing ranch and a husband you didn't want, and you've made it work through sheer force of will. If that's not worth liking, I don't know what is. The words settled around them, heavy and real. Eliza felt something shift in her chest, a wall she hadn't known she'd built starting to crack. I like that you don't sugarcoat things, she said quietly. That you're honest even when it's uncomfortable. That you work yourself to death making sure those kids have what they need. That you've never once made me feel like I owe you anything, even though I owe you everything. Cole looked uncomfortable with the praise. That's just being decent. No, it's not. Decent is what the town did, feeling sorry but doing nothing. You actually helped, actually stood up when everyone else walked away. She paused. I think somewhere along the way this stopped being an arrangement for me. I don't know when, but it did. Yeah, Cole said, his voice rough. Me too. They sat in the quiet barn, lamplight casting long shadows. Outside, an owl called. The horses shifted in their stalls. The world kept turning, indifferent to their small human drama. So what now? Eliza asked. Now we go in front of that judge and we tell him the truth. Not the convenient version, the real one. Cole stood, offered his hand to help her up. That we're 2 broken people who found 6 more broken people and somehow managed to build something that works. It's not perfect. It's not what anyone would choose if they had better options, but it's real. And it's ours. Eliza took his hand. He pulled her up, and for a moment they stood close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his eyes, the scar tissue along his jaw, the lines that grief and hard work had carved into his face. Think it'll be enough? She asked. I don't know. But it's all we've got. The day of the hearing arrived cold and gray, the sky threatening rain. They dressed carefully, Cole in his one good shirt, Eliza in her least worn dress. The children were scrubbed until they shone, dressed in clothes that had been mended so many times the original fabric was hard to find. Remember, Eliza said as they climbed into the wagon, be honest. Answer the judge's questions truthfully. Don't exaggerate or try to make things sound better than they are. What if the truth isn't good enough? Thomas asked, voicing what they were all thinking. Then we deal with it, Cole said. But hiding the truth definitely isn't good enough, so we try honesty and hope it works. The ride to town felt endless. Nobody talked much. The children sat pressed together, holding hands. Cole drove with his jaw set, eyes on the road. Eliza tried to project confidence she didn't feel. The courthouse was packed. Apparently the whole town wanted to see how this turned out. Brennan sat in the front row with several other council members, looking smug. Hayes stood near the door, his expression carefully neutral. Other faces Eliza recognized: shopkeepers, neighbors, people who'd watched her beg for help 3 months ago and offered nothing. Judge Patterson was an older man with white hair and a face that gave nothing away. He sat behind a massive desk, reading through papers Hayes had submitted. When everyone was settled, he looked up. This is a hearing to determine permanent guardianship of 6 minor children currently in the temporary custody of Cole and Eliza Mercer. I've read Sheriff Hayes' reports. I've reviewed the council's petition. Now I want to hear from the parties involved. He looked at Cole and Eliza. Mr. Mercer, why should I grant you permanent custody? Cole stood. Because those kids deserve a home, a real one, and we're giving them that. Many families could give them a home. Why you specifically? Because we were there when nobody else was. Because we've spent 3 months proving we can do this. Because those kids have been through enough hell, they shouldn't have to start over again with strangers. Patterson made a note. Mrs. Mercer, your turn. Why should I grant you custody? Eliza stood, her legs shaking. Because I love them. All of them. They're not perfect, and neither are we, but we're a family, the real kind. Not because of blood or legal papers, but because we choose each other every day. You've been married 3 months. That's hardly enough time to... It's enough time to know what matters. Those children matter. This family matters. Her voice strengthened. You want to send them east to better families? Fine. But those families won't love them more than we do, won't fight for them harder, won't stay up all night when they're sick or teach them to face their fears or make them feel safe for the first time since their parents died. Brennan stood. Your Honor, if I may, this romantic notion of love conquering all is touching, but impractical. These children need structure, education, proper moral guidance. Mr. and Mrs. Mercer are providing a rough frontier existence at best. Is that truly in the children's best interest? They're getting structure, Cole said sharply. They're learning to read, write, work hard, survive. That's more practical education than any Eastern finishing school will give them. And moral guidance, Brennan pressed, this marriage of convenience, this arrangement built on desperation, rather than genuine commitment. What kind of example is that? Patterson held up a hand. I'd like to hear from the children, individually, starting with the oldest. They called Sarah first. She walked to the front with her shoulders back, meeting the judge's eyes directly. Miss Sarah Walker, are you happy living with the Mercers? Yes, sir. Do they treat you well? Yes, sir. Do you feel safe there? Sarah hesitated. For a terrible moment, Eliza thought she was going to say no. Then the girl spoke, her voice clear and firm. I feel safer there than anywhere I've been since Mama died. Mr. Cole is hard on us sometimes, but fair. Miss Eliza, Mrs. Mercer, she cares about us. Really cares. Not because she has to, because she wants to. Sarah looked directly at Brennan. They're not perfect, but they're ours. And we're theirs. That's what family is. One by one, the other children gave similar testimony. Emma said the ranch made her feel useful. James said he was learning things that mattered. Thomas admitted Cole was strict but kind. The twins, speaking in their overlapping way, said they didn't cry for their mama as much anymore because they had new people to love them. Through it all, Brennan grew more agitated, whispering to the other council members. Patterson remained impassive, taking notes, asking questions. Hayes watched everything with shrewd eyes. Finally, Patterson set down his pen. I've heard enough. I'm going to take a short recess to review the evidence and make my decision. We'll reconvene in 30 minutes. The wait was excruciating. They stood outside the courthouse. The children clustered close. Cole paced. Eliza tried to breathe normally. Hayes came over looking grave. That could have gone better, he said quietly. Or worse, Cole countered. Could have. But Brennan made some points the judge will consider seriously. The marriage of convenience issue. The frontier hardship. Whether this is truly the best environment for young children. What do you think he'll decide? Eliza asked. Hayes shook his head. Patterson's unpredictable, but he's fair. That's all I can tell you. 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. When they filed back into the courtroom, Eliza's hands were shaking so badly she had to clasp them together. Cole stood beside her, his shoulder touching hers. The children sat behind them, silent and tense. Patterson cleared his throat. I've made my decision. The room went deathly quiet. This case presents an unusual situation, a marriage of convenience, a makeshift family, circumstances born of crisis rather than choice. The counsel raises valid concerns about whether this arrangement serves the children's best interests. He paused. However, Eliza's heart stopped. However, I've also heard compelling testimony from 6 children who clearly feel safe, cared for, and genuinely happy in the Mercers' custody. I've read reports from Sheriff Hayes detailing a well-maintained household and significant improvements in the children's well-being, and I've observed 2 adults who, regardless of how their marriage began, demonstrate genuine commitment to these children's welfare. He looked directly at Cole and Eliza. The law requires me to determine what is in the children's best interest. Not what is conventional, not what is comfortable for the community, what is best for 6 specific children who have already endured tremendous loss and upheaval. Another pause. Eliza couldn't breathe. Therefore, I am granting permanent custody to Cole and Eliza Mercer, with the following conditions. The children will continue their education. The household will be subject to quarterly inspections for the next 2 years, and the Mercers will appear before this court annually to demonstrate continued compliance with guardianship requirements. The room erupted. Brennan was on his feet, objecting. Hayes was smiling. The children were crying. Happy tears this time. Cole grabbed Eliza's hand and squeezed so hard it hurt. They'd won. Patterson banged his gavel. Order! This hearing is concluded. The Mercers are dismissed with my congratulations and my expectations that they will uphold their responsibilities. Outside, the children mobbed them, everyone talking at once. Sarah hugged Eliza so hard she couldn't breathe. The twins wrapped themselves around Cole's legs. James and Thomas were actually smiling for once. Emma stood back, quiet but beaming. We get to stay, Sarah kept saying. We get to stay. Hayes approached, hand extended. Congratulations. You earned this. Thank you, Eliza managed, for everything. Don't thank me yet. Those quarterly inspections are real. Patterson wants to make sure this works long term. Don't let him down. We won't, Cole said. They climbed into the wagon for the ride home, everyone giddy with relief. The children chattered about what they'd do when they got back, chores they'd been too nervous to think about, projects they'd put on hold. They sounded like kids again. Just kids, not orphans waiting for the next disaster. Halfway home, it started to rain. Not a downpour, just a steady fall that turned the road muddy and made the children squeal. Cole pulled the wagon under a tree to wait it out. They sat huddled together, 6 kids and 2 adults, getting damp but not caring. We did it, Eliza said quietly. Yeah, Cole agreed. We did. Now what? He looked at her, rain dripping off his hat, a smile tugging at his mouth. Now we go home, our home, with our kids. And we figure out how to make this actually work long term. Think we can? I think we already have. He reached over, took her hand in full view of all 6 children. We've just been too busy surviving to notice. The rain let up. They drove the rest of the way home through mud and gathering darkness, arriving as the first stars came out. The ranch looked the same as always, rough, imperfect, held together by hard work and hope. But now it was officially theirs. All of it. The land, the house, the life they were building. That night, after the children were asleep, Eliza and Cole sat on the porch like they always did. But something had changed. The space between them felt different, less like distance, more like potential. Thank you, Eliza said, for standing up in that courtroom, for fighting. Same to you. I meant what I said. About this stopping being an arrangement. About it being real. I know. Me too. Cole looked at her, his expression open in a way she'd never seen. I didn't expect this. Any of it. Thought I'd live alone, work the ranch, die alone eventually. Then you showed up with 6 kids and a stubborn streak a mile wide and turned everything upside down. Sorry? Don't be. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. He said it simply, like it was obvious. You and those kids, you're the best thing. Eliza felt tears prick her eyes. We're a mess. All of us. Yeah, but we're our mess. That counts for something. She leaned against him, feeling his arm come around her shoulders. They sat like that for a long time, watching stars appear one by one in the clearing sky. Inside, their children slept soundly for the first time in months. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new worries, but tonight, they were safe. They were together. They were home. And somehow, impossibly, against every odd, they'd become a family. The real kind. Built not on blood or legal papers, but on choice and commitment and love that had snuck up on them when they weren't looking. It wasn't perfect. It would never be perfect. But it was theirs, and that was enough. Winter came hard that year, arriving 2 weeks earlier than expected with snow that buried the ranch under 3 feet of white. Cole had been preparing for months, stocking hay, reinforcing the barn, laying in supplies, but nature didn't care about preparation. It just came and stayed, turning the world into something beautiful and brutal. Eliza woke on the first morning of the blizzard to find Cole already gone from their bed. They'd been sharing it for 4 months now, long enough that waking up alone felt wrong. She found him in the barn, checking on the cattle they'd brought in close to the house. How bad? She asked. Bad enough. Storm's not letting up. He brushed snow from his coat. We're going to be stuck here for a while. Maybe a week if we're unlucky. A week trapped in a small house with 6 energetic children. Eliza felt a headache starting already. We'll manage. Always do. He said it like a fact, not hope. Somewhere in the last few months, they'd stopped questioning whether they could handle things and just started handling them. The children took the snow with mixed reactions. The twins thought it was magic and wanted to play in it immediately. James and Thomas saw it as a challenge and started planning elaborate snow forts. Emma worried about her chickens. Sarah, always practical, started calculating food rations. We've got enough, Eliza assured her. Cole made sure of that. What if we're stuck longer than a week? Then we make it stretch. But we won't starve, sweetheart. I promise. Sarah didn't look convinced, but she nodded and went to help the twins into their warmest clothes. The girl had relaxed considerably since the hearing, but she still carried worry like a familiar coat, always ready to put it back on. By the second day, cabin fever had set in. The children were restless, bickering over nothing. Cole retreated to the barn to do unnecessary repairs. Eliza tried to organize lessons, but nobody could focus. Even reading aloud barely held their attention. On the third day, Thomas and James got into a fistfight over who got to sit closer to the fire. Cole separated them, sent them to opposite corners, and went back outside without a word. Eliza found him later, chopping wood they didn't need. They're just bored, she said. I know. You can't hide out here every time things get difficult. Not hiding, working. Cole. She waited until he looked at her. Talk to me. He set down the axe, breathing hard. I'm fine. You're not. You've been tense for days. What's wrong? He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, first quarterly inspection is in 2 weeks. If this storm doesn't break, Hayes won't be able to get through. Judge will think we're avoiding it. We can't control the weather. Doesn't matter. We missed that inspection. Patterson will have questions. Start wondering if we're hiding something. Cole picked up the axe again, then set it back down. I keep waiting for it to fall apart. For someone to realize we don't know what we're doing and take it all away. Eliza understood that fear. She felt it too, in quiet moments when the children were asleep and the weight of responsibility pressed down like the snow outside. But she'd learned something in the last few months. Fear didn't have to be paralyzing. It could be motivating. We're not going to lose them, she said firmly. We've made it this far. We'll make it through this too. You sound sure. I am sure. Because we have each other. She took his hand cold from the winter air. That's what's different now. We're not doing this alone anymore. He squeezed her hand, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. When did you get so optimistic? When I married a stubborn rancher who taught me that working through problems beats worrying about them. That got almost a smile. They stood in the falling snow, their breath making clouds in the cold air. Inside, they could hear the children arguing about something. Sarah's voice rose above the others, trying to restore order. "Should probably go referee," Cole said. "Probably." Neither of them moved. These stolen moments had become precious, brief pauses in the chaos where they could just be Cole and Eliza, not parents or ranchers or people responsible for 6 lives, where they could remember why they'd chosen this, even when it was hard. The storm broke on the 5th day. The children erupted from the house like prisoners freed from jail, screaming and throwing snow at each other. Cole and Eliza stood on the porch, watching them play. "Think they'll remember this?" Eliza asked. "Being snowed in, going stir-crazy, fighting over nothing?" "Maybe. Or maybe they'll just remember the snow fort they're building." He nodded toward where James and Thomas were working together, their earlier fight forgotten. "Kids are good at holding on to the good parts and letting go of the rest. Wish adults could do that." "Who says we can't?" Cole looked at her. 6 months ago, you were a school teacher with a quiet life. Now you're a rancher's wife with 6 kids and more problems than solutions. You regret it?" "No." The answer came immediately, surprising her with its certainty. "Not even the hard parts. This is the first time in my life I felt like I was doing something that mattered. Teaching mattered. Teaching was safe. This is..." She searched for the right word. "This is living. Really living, not just existing." He smiled, the real kind that crinkled his eyes. "Yeah, it is." Sheriff Hayes arrived the next week, right on schedule. Eliza had been nervous about the inspection, but Hayes barely glanced around before declaring everything satisfactory. "Kids look good. House is clean. Pantry's stocked. You're managing the winter well." He accepted the coffee Eliza offered. "Judge will be pleased with my report." "That's it?" Cole asked. "You're not going to interrogate the children, check the barn, inspect the bedrooms?" "I could, but I've been doing this job long enough to know when people are making it work." Hayes took a sip. "You two have found your rhythm. The kids have settled. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." After he left, Eliza felt something release in her chest. The constant fear that someone would find them lacking, that they'd discover some fatal flaw in their household, had been eating at her. Hayes's casual approval felt like permission to stop holding their breath. That night, she and Cole talked late into the evening, something they'd been doing more often. Not about chores or children or ranch business, but about everything else. Their pasts, their dreams, the strange path that had led them to each other. Cole told her about his sisters, really told her, their personalities, their laughs, the way Mary had wanted to be a teacher and Beth had wanted to see the ocean. "You would have liked them," he said quietly. "They were brave like you. Stubborn, too." "Sounds like a family trait." "Guess so." He was quiet for a moment. "You know what they would have loved most about this? The kids. All 6 of them. Mary always said she wanted a big family. Beth just wanted people to love who'd love her back. They got that," Eliza said, "through you. You gave 6 kids what your sisters never got, a second chance." Cole's eyes were bright in the lamplight. "We gave them that. Not just me." "Partners," Eliza said, testing the word. "Yeah, partners." The word felt right. They'd started as strangers, become reluctant allies, grown into something like friends. Now they were partners in the truest sense. 2 people building something together, sharing the weight of it, making it work through sheer stubborn determination. Spring came slowly, grudgingly, the snow melting in patches to reveal mud and dead grass. But underneath, green shoots were emerging. The ranch was waking up, and so were the children. Sarah had started teaching the twins to read, her patience remarkable for a 13-year-old. Emma had expanded her chicken operation, somehow convincing Cole to build a bigger coop. James and Thomas were inseparable now, their earlier fights replaced by the kind of partnership only brothers could have. The garden needed planting, fences needed mending, cattle needed moving to fresh pasture. Work stretched ahead endlessly, but it didn't feel overwhelming anymore. It felt purposeful. Every repaired fence was an investment in their future. Every planted seed was hope taking root. One evening in early May, Cole came back from town with news that made Eliza's stomach clench. "Brennan's leaving," he said. Taking a position in Cheyenne. Council's replacing him. Good riddance. Yeah, but that's not the interesting part. Cole hung his hat on its peg. Mrs. Patterson, the shop owner whose husband wanted to move to Ohio, she's staying, and she's been telling anyone who'll listen that what we're doing here is exactly what this town needs. More people taking care of each other instead of waiting for someone else to solve their problems. Eliza blinked. She said that? Word for word. Apparently she's been feeling guilty about turning you away. Decided the least she could do was speak up for us now. Cole pulled out a chair, sat down heavily. Hayes says opinions shifting in town. People are starting to see this, us, the kids, the ranch, as something good instead of scandalous. Took them long enough. Better late than never. He looked at her across the table. Point is, we're not fighting alone anymore. Town's coming around, slowly, but they are. It shouldn't have mattered what the town thought. They'd built this life despite the town's objections, not because of its approval, but Eliza couldn't deny the relief that came with knowing they weren't pariahs anymore. The children could grow up without that stigma. They could just be kids with a family, not orphans in a scandal. Summer brought its own challenges. The heat was brutal, the work relentless, but it also brought moments of grace. Long evenings when the children played by the creek while Cole and Eliza sat nearby, talking about nothing and everything. Mornings when they woke tangled together, the line between arrangement and something real blurring until it disappeared entirely. It happened gradually, then all at once. The way Cole started kissing her goodbye when he left for town. The way she'd reach for his hand without thinking. The way they'd catch each other's eyes across the dinner table and smile at some private joke. They'd become something neither had planned for or expected. Actual partners, actual friends, and somewhere along the way, actually married in more than just name. The second quarterly inspection came and went without incident. So did the third. By the time fall arrived, painting the mountains in shades of gold and red, they'd been a family for almost a year. A real family, tested by weather and work, and 6 strong-willed children, held together by something stronger than legal papers. One crisp October evening, Eliza was putting the twins to bed when Grace asked the question she'd been expecting for months. Are you and Mr. Cole our parents now? Lucy sat up, waiting for the answer. Both girls watched her with those serious eyes, too wise for 6-year-olds. Eliza sat on the edge of their bed. We're not trying to replace your mama and papa. Nobody could do that. But are you our parents? Grace persisted. Do you want us to be? The twins looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations only they could have. Then Lucy nodded. Yeah, we do. Then yes, Eliza said, her throat tight. We're your parents, Cole and I, if you want us to be. Grace climbed into her lap, followed immediately by Lucy. We want you to be. Eliza held them both, these girls who'd lost everything and somehow found the courage to open their hearts again. When she finally got them settled and left their room, she found Cole waiting in the hallway. He'd heard everything. They called us their parents, she said. I know. That makes it real. It's been real for a while. He pulled her close, right there in the narrow hallway. We were just too stubborn to admit it. She laughed against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong. We're good at stubborn. Best thing about us. The final inspection before the annual review came in November. Hayes arrived looking almost cheerful, which Eliza had learned meant good news. Just got word from Judge Patterson, he said. He's canceling the annual hearing. Says based on my reports, there's no need. The custody is permanent, and he sees no reason to make you appear before him again, unless problems arise. Cole and Eliza looked at each other, hardly daring to believe it. We're done? Eliza asked. No more inspections? I'll still drop by occasionally, but unofficially, just to see how you're doing. Hayes smiled. You've earned this. Those kids have a good home. Better than most. Patterson knows it, I know it, and even the council knows it now. You're free to just be a family without the territory looking over your shoulder. After Hayes left, the children bombarded them with questions. What did it mean? Were they staying forever? Could they stop worrying now? It means we're officially done proving ourselves, Cole explained. No more judges or inspections or people questioning whether we're fit to raise you. You're ours. We're yours. That's all there is to it. Thomas whooped. James grinned. Emma actually laughed out loud. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but happy ones for once. The twins started dancing in circles, singing nonsense. That night, after the celebration dinner and the children were finally in bed, Eliza and Cole sat on their porch under a sky full of stars. It had become their ritual, this quiet time when the day's work was done and they could just exist together. A year ago, I was planning to put 6 kids on an orphan train, Eliza said. Now I can't imagine life without them. A year ago, I was alone on this ranch, wondering why I bothered. Cole's arm was around her shoulders, familiar and comfortable. Now I know. Why? Because it was always meant for this. For family, for noise and chaos and arguments over who gets the last biscuit. For teaching kids to ride horses and mend fences and face their fears. He looked at her. For you. The words settled around them, simple and true. Eliza turned to face him fully, seeing her husband, not the stranger who'd offered help in a desperate moment, but the man who'd become her partner in every sense that mattered. I love you, she said. I don't know when it happened, but it did. I know when it happened for me, Cole said. It was the day you told Thomas to try harder with the horses, even though he was scared. You didn't baby him or let him quit. You just believed he could do it. That's when I knew. Knew what? That I was falling for you, that this wasn't an arrangement anymore, that I wanted it to be real. He cupped her face in his calloused hands. I love you too. Have for months. Just took me a while to figure out how to say it. She kissed him, there on the porch under stars that had watched them struggle and survive and somehow build something beautiful from desperation and hope. It wasn't their first kiss, but it felt like the first honest one. No pretense, no performance for watching eyes, just 2 people who'd chosen each other and meant it. Winter came again, but this time they were ready. The children had grown, Sarah nearly as tall as Eliza now, the twins losing their baby faces, the boys turning lean and strong from ranch work. They'd learned the rhythms of this life, the hard parts and the good parts, the way family worked when everyone pulled together. On a cold December morning, Eliza woke to find the bed empty again. But this time, she found Cole in the kitchen making coffee, 6 sleepy children already gathering for breakfast. He looked up when she entered, smiled that smile that still made her heart skip. Morning, Mrs. Mercer. Morning, Mr. Mercer. The children groaned at their obvious affection. Sarah made gagging noises. Thomas said something about old people being gross, but they were all smiling, even as they complained. This was their normal now. 2 parents who actually liked each other, siblings who fought and made up and fought again, a household held together by love and work and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other. After breakfast, Cole announced they were all going to town. There were protests. It was cold. They had chores. What was the point? But Cole insisted, and Eliza backed him up, which meant the matter was settled. The ride to town was loud and chaotic, everyone bundled in their warmest clothes, arguing over who got to sit where. But when they arrived, Cole didn't stop at the general store or the bank. He drove straight to the land office. What are we doing here? Sarah asked. Cole helped Eliza down from the wagon, then started helping the children. We're making it official. Inside, a clerk had papers ready. Adoption papers, Eliza realized as she read them. Legal documents that would change 6 children's names from Walker to Mercer. That would make them not just wards or foster children, but actual legal heirs. Full members of the family. You don't have to do this, Cole told them. You can keep your parents' names if you want, honor their memory that way. This is your choice. The children looked at each other. Sarah spoke first. Mama and Papa will always be our parents, but you and Miss Eliza, Mrs. Mercer, you're our parents too. We can honor both. We want to be Mercers, James added. The others nodded. So they signed. All of them. 6 children choosing their names, their family, their future. The clerk witnessed it, made it legal and binding. When they left the office, they were officially and completely the Mercer family. On the ride home, Thomas asked what happened to kids who didn't get families like theirs. Some of them find good homes, Eliza said carefully. Some don't. Some end up on farms or in factories or just lost in the system. That could have been us, Emma said quietly. Yeah, Cole agreed. It could have. Why wasn't it? Lucy asked. What made us different? Eliza looked at Cole. saw the same answer in his eyes that she felt in her heart. You weren't different. You just got lucky. And because one stubborn man decided to help instead of walking away, and because you were brave enough to trust strangers, and because we all chose each other when we could have chosen the easy way out. So we're a family because we chose to be? Grace said. Exactly, Cole said. That's what makes it real, not blood or legal papers or what anyone else thinks. The choice. We choose each other every day. That's what family is. They rode the rest of the way in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when people are secure and belonging to each other. The ranch came into view, smoke rising from the chimney, fences strong, animals healthy. Everything they'd built together through hard work and harder choices. That night, Eliza stood in the doorway of the children's room, watching them sleep. 6 kids who'd lost everything and found each other. Who'd been given a second chance and grabbed it with both hands. Who taught her and Cole what family really meant? Cole came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. You thinking about what could have happened? What almost happened, if you hadn't helped, if the judge had ruled differently, if any of 100 things had gone wrong instead of right. But they didn't. No, Eliza agreed, leaning back against him. They didn't. They stood like that for a long time, 2 people who'd started as strangers and become everything to each other, who'd taken broken pieces and built something whole, who'd proven that family wasn't about blood or tradition or doing things the way they'd always been done. It was about showing up, working hard, choosing each other, again and again and again. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and quiet, covering the ranch in white. Inside, the fire crackled. The children breathed in peaceful sleep. And 2 people who'd found each other in the middle of crisis discovered they'd also found home. Not the place. The people. The 6 kids who'd needed saving and had saved them right back. The partnership that had become friendship, that had become love. The family they'd built from nothing but stubbornness and hope, and the radical belief that sometimes the right thing to do was the hardest thing, and that was okay because they'd do it together. Eliza turned in Cole's arms, looked up at the man who'd become her husband in every way that mattered. No regrets? Not a single one. You? Not one. She kissed him softly. This is better than anything I could have planned. Yeah, he agreed. It really is. They went to bed that night like they had every night for months. Together, comfortable, home. And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all again. The work, the chaos, the love. The ordinary magic of family built not by accident or tradition, but by choice. 6 orphans had found a home. 2 strangers had found each other. And a failing ranch had become the foundation for something that would last generations. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. In the unforgiving Wyoming frontier, they'd learned what mattered most. Not avoiding pain, but walking through it together. Not waiting for someone else to fix problems, but rolling up your sleeves and fixing them yourself. Not giving up when things got hard, but digging in and fighting for what was worth keeping. They'd learned that courage looked like a school teacher refusing to let children be shipped away like cargo. That compassion looked like a rancher offering help when everyone else walked away. That family looked like 6 broken kids and 2 imperfect adults choosing each other every single day. And they'd learned that in a world that could be harsh and cruel and unfair, the simple act of showing up and trying, really trying, could change everything. The snow fell. The fire burned. The children slept. And the Mercer family rested, secure in the knowledge that they'd found what everyone searches for and not everyone finds. They'd found each other. And that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. One,